Welcome to the Building Up Women in Property podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Bangura, and I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. This podcast is for ambitious women who work in property and construction, who want to learn how to have a career they love on their terms. Join me every week where I'll leave you excited and confident to take your next steps. Thanks for being here with me. Now let's get started. Hello, today we are talking about, is it time for a reinvention? And this really comes off the back of last week's podcast, which was, asking the question of, are you on track for where you want to be? And I'm always really conscious that when we go back and we look at where we are and where we want to be, that sometimes there is a disconnect, and it's not just because we haven't taken action. It's actually because the goals we set 6 months ago, 12 months ago, several years ago, no longer align with where we are or what we need or what we desire or the impact we want to have in the world anymore. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I also want to share with you some of my own experiences from going through that process of reinvention and charting a different course from what I had always planned to do and what I'd always expected my life would look like. And I really invite you to listen to this episode and think about what parts apply to you and take away whatever snippets are useful in your own career and life journey, and, discard the bits that are less relevant. But I think there is something in this for all of us, because whether we are on the journey to achieving what we want, or whether you just have that sort of growth mindset and you're always eager and hungry to do more and get better and learn new things, I think that always lends ourselves to this process of reinvention. And I think it's really important to just acknowledge up front, there is no right way to do this. Everyone's journey will be different. But I do want to share with you the journey I went on, because I don't think enough of us talk about this. Because I think this is often the messy middle of our careers and of our lives. And, for me, this process was actually really hard. It was really disconcerting. I felt very unsure of myself in a way that I don't usually. And it was a really tough process to navigate. And so let me start with my own journey. And forgive me, I think I might have shared parts of this or all of this on the podcast before, but I think it's a story worth telling. And I was reminded by a lady who reached out to me about leadership coaching and what her next steps for her career might be last week. And as I shared this story, she was like, gosh, that's so powerful. It really resonated with her. But again, I don't think that we talk about this enough. I think we often are so clouded in trying to have it all figured out in our lives that we don't want to share that messy middle part. And that is part of the reinvention process. So reinvention doesn't happen seamlessly. It is, by its very nature, a doing away with the old and an incoming of the new. And that is complicated. So taking you back on my journey, I suppose 7 or so years ago, it was sort of late 2015, 2016. And I was at this point in my life where I was doing really well. I had a great job. I'd recently been promoted. I was really thriving in my work. I'd gotten married. We'd bought sort of our dream house. Life was looking really, really great on paper. And sort of later that year, I got a new role that I'd always sort of dreamed of having, and everything was going really great for me. But I felt completely hollow. I can't think of another way to describe it other than I felt like I wasn't enjoying, or I couldn't really relate to the apparent success that I was having. It felt like I was ticking the boxes, and no sooner had I ticked one box, I was wondering what next. And I wasn't being challenged in the way I thought I would be challenged, either through my promotion or through my new role. And I felt like I was in this cycle of trying to prove myself, but not quite sure what outcome I wanted. I just didn't know, frankly, what would make me happy. And I realized a lot of the things I'd always assumed about my career and my own progression were wrong. Like, I no longer wanted to reach the same level of seniority that I'd previously aspired to. That no longer appealed to me. And I just couldn't see a clear pathway ahead. And it felt like I was going through the motions day in, day out. I was showing up. I was doing a good job. Things were going great on paper, as I said, but I just wasn't getting that level of reward or fulfillment anymore. And I found it really, really hard not knowing what I was working towards. And, with hindsight, I can look back and say, at the time, my view was so focused because, at the time I'd been in property and construction for, a decade. I loved the work. I loved the industry. But I just didn't see the pathway ahead. And so for me, I had to really, first of all, accept that things weren't all, hunky-dory, and kind of open myself up to thinking outside of the box, really exploring what else was a possibility for me. And that was a really hard process. And I'm someone who really prides myself on learning and growing and having that growth mindset. But opening myself up to the possibility of burning things down and starting again was a real struggle mentally. It was such a shift. And I've always been so attached to my career as who I am, and not even so much as a status symbol, but just because I love working. I'm genuinely motivated by my work. It is what gets me up in the mornings. I've never had a desire to not work or to be a stay-at-home parent. I've always wanted to work. I know that it lights me up. So going back to basics, allowing myself to really reimagine what was possible took time. It was quite a process. It was quite a journey for me. And as I said, it was an unsettling one because I didn't feel in control of it. I really tried everything in that time. I started working with a coach myself, and that was great to really challenge me and give me a guidance and a framework and things to think about that were outside of my own, sphere of knowledge, and really push my boundaries in a safe and supportive way. But I read all the books, and I've always been a self-help junkie, but I went deep. I really, really was reading and listening to everything. I went on courses. I explored further education. I was really trying out so many different things to try and expand my horizons. And, I've always, throughout my life, periodically journaled. I've always found that a really good way to kind of get things out of my head and deal with some of the things, particularly that I'm struggling with. And I really started to do that quite a lot during this period. And at one point went on secondment for 3 months to Western Australia, to Broome, and literally left my family and left my job. And I took this sabbatical to go and live with, 6 people I didn't know and work in a organization I knew nothing about, just to really help clear my mind and reset and figure out what I wanted.
I hope you've been enjoying the episode. I wanted to take a moment to let you know about my free Career Confidence Masterclass. This is for ambitious career-orientated women who are ready to stop playing small and to confidently create a career you love. Head over to my website, beautifuldisruptions.com, for more info. Now let's get back to the episode.
And this was a process for me of over about 18 months where I really started to, I suppose, shift my own self-perception. I started to really think beyond what I knew, and I started to allow the possibility of something else to kind of fester and grow in me. And I allowed that process of reinvention and rethinking and reevaluating my life to really kind of sit on the boiler for a while and figure out what it was that I wanted moving forward. And again, this was not an easy process for me. And ultimately it culminated in me deciding to go into coaching and into leadership development. And I kind of fumbled on that decision. One of my friends, who in fact I'd been living with when I was on secondment in Broome, Cynthia, she sort of said to me, I've been doing this coaching. I think you would be really good at that. And that was what kind of opened the floodgates for me to explore that avenue. But it was only to explore that as a possibility for myself. And it was literally a conversation that happened by chance in a circumstance and scenario that I would never normally have been in, that has put me on the direction in my career that I am now. I'm so grateful for that, but it wouldn't have happened by accident. It wouldn't have happened if I kept doing the same things that I always have done. And if I kept being with the same people that I'm always with, and I kept seeking the same advice from the same people. Sometimes we need to really accept that we need to broaden our horizons. We need to get help. We need to seek other opinions and have new experiences in order to gain that fresh perspective and to get clear on what it is that we want moving forward. And look, through my own journey, what I realized was, as I talked to more and more people, particularly women in, the property and construction industry, I realized I really wasn't alone on that journey. Like so many people were struggling with this idea of what's next? How do I do all the things? How do I step into this new version of me? And what does that new version of me look like? So I sort of realized that there was definitely a market for supporting people like us in our industry to help them navigate our careers and sort of become confident and impactful leaders. But I think it's important for each of us, wherever you are on your journey and in your career, to really stop and think about, is this right? Is this what I want? Is this where I want to go? And it's totally okay if your answer is no or I'm not sure. Because if you're willing to and you want to, then that's a basis to take action from. So really be open to this and challenge yourself, explore what's going on for you. And that requires a lot of self-awareness and honesty. It can be very uncomfortable, but it's definitely a process worth going through. And it's important that we don't try and have all the answers figured out. Let it be a journey because it is. And of course, you want the support and the guidance to kind of get you from where you are now to where you want to be in the shortest amount of time. But it isn't something that just happens overnight. Be realistic about the process and kind of embrace that journey and get the right support and resources to help you. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be willing to explore new things and to be open to those new possibilities. I know many of you listening to this will resonate with this desire for something different for your career. Let this be your prompt to kind of start that journey. And I think some of the telltale signs that I'd suggest is if you are feeling stagnant in your work, if you feel like it's kind of Groundhog Day, or you're just feeling stuck in your position or your role and you don't know what to do next, or what to do next doesn't appeal to you, that's one really good indicator that it's time to really think a bit broader and consider this new version of you and these new goals that you might have. Another situation is that you might have a change in circumstances, right? Whether it's as a result of shifts in the industry or technology or your personal circumstances, all of those things can be catalysts to question the future. So see them for what they are. Don't resist the process. Don't resist the circumstances. That won't get you anywhere, but just be aware of the change and be open to what's possible and what's next for you. You know, it might be almost that journey of personal growth that either kind of signals to you that you want to do something more or different. It's that kind of natural evolution of your skills and your interests and your passions that kind of give you that desire for change. And as you kind of ponder this question of, you know, is it time to reinvent yourself? Think about what are the motives? Are you doing this for you or are you doing it for other people? And, you know, I'm always going to suggest it needs to be driven by you. It needs to be about what you want. We need to let go of people pleasing and other people's expectations, you know, and take more notice of ourselves and trust ourselves to make the decisions we need to make. I know that this process can be really scary. For so many people, this brings up self-doubt, the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of success, so many fears, you know. And we start to think ahead as to what are the logistics of change in my career? How would I manage all the things? And I just want you to perhaps park those concerns and those challenges and stop worrying about how to overcome them and just kind of go back to the question of, is it time for you to reinvent yourself? And give yourself some space to really think that through. And some of you will be like, no, I'm good. I've got this. I'm on track. I've got my plan. I'm happy. I'm inspired by what I'm working towards. And some won't be sure, and others will be like, hell yes, this is time. And wherever you are, it's totally okay, but just be open to new possibilities. Be open to your own development, you know, and recognize that we are in our careers now for 40 or 50 years. And it is totally normal and natural that we would want to reinvent ourselves during that process, right? That version of you that started in the industry, you know, in your early 20s is not the same person that you are in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s. We all grow and we all change, and that is part of evolution. And when you look to yourself around what is next, this reinvention does not necessarily mean burning all your bridges and starting afresh. Usually what it is for most of us is taking where we are now, having the awareness about the skills and things we love doing, what we're good at, and then finding how to build on that. It's a process of building towards that next version of ourselves. It's this idea of evolution rather than revolution. And I just want you to think about where you are in the journey and where you want to go, and whether you need to shift things in your life in order to get there, because that is what reinvention ultimately is. And it will look different for each of us, but you're not alone on this journey, even though I know it can be really scary and daunting. And many of us will put it off for a long time. But let this podcast be your prompt to kind of take action and to really consider this. And, if you do think, it's time for reinvention, reach out, let me know. I would love your feedback. As always, come over to LinkedIn, say hello, shoot me a note about what came up for you during this episode. And I look forward to connecting. And I just want you to know, wherever you are on your journey, you're exactly where you need to be. So take the time, take the space, and move forward from there. Now have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining me on the Building Up Women in Property podcast. I'm Rebecca Bangura, and if you'd like to learn more about what I do, head over to LinkedIn and connect with me. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.